Every setback you have experienced in your life was never random, accidental, or meaningless. Nothing you went through happened without purpose. It was not punishment from God, and it was never proof that you were falling behind in life. What looked like delay or resistance was actually preparation taking place behind the scenes. God was using those difficult moments to shape you, strengthen you, and build qualities inside you that success alone could never produce. This message is especially for those who almost lost hope, those who questioned their purpose, and those who sometimes wondered why their path seemed harder than everyone else's. It is for the ones who asked God why life seemed to demand more from them than from others. What you did not realize at the time is that the weight of your calling requires a deeper level of preparation. What you once called a setback was never meant to stop your destiny. It was meant to reposition you, to recalibrate your direction, and to realign you with the path that could truly sustain the level of blessing, responsibility, and influence that God is preparing to release into your life. What looked like a pause in your progress was actually heaven intervening to prevent damage, mistakes, or consequences that you could not yet see or understand. You interpreted the delay as denial. You believed that the closed doors meant failure. When things slowed down or fell apart, you assumed it was because you had made a mistake or done something wrong. But in the spiritual realm, setbacks often happen not because God has abandoned you, but because He is actively involved in your journey. When God remains silent, sometimes He is simply observing and allowing life to unfold. But when He interrupts your plans, it is often because He is protecting you from something that would eventually harm your future. God's interruptions are not meant to destroy your progress, they are meant to redirect it. There are times when God will stop a path that appears productive, successful, and promising, because He sees where that road will eventually lead. If that path would lead you into exhaustion, compromise, emotional damage, or spiritual misalignment, God will step in and block it. He will close doors that seem perfect if those doors require you to shrink who you are, rush the process, sacrifice your integrity, or abandon the principles that define your character. Sometimes your plans fall apart not because they were bad plans, but because the success they promised would have cost you your peace, your spiritual clarity, your character, or your future authority. God values your long-term purpose more than temporary success. Some of the doors that closed in your life closed because the version of you that would have walked through them at that time was not yet strong enough, mature enough, or refined enough to remain there without being overwhelmed. God knew that if those doors had remained open too early, the pressure behind them might have broken you. Some opportunities collapsed because they were never designed to last forever. They were only temporary seasons meant to teach you lessons, develop wisdom, and prepare you for something greater ahead. Some relationships ended because the people connected to those relationships were not meant to walk with you into the next chapter of your life. If they had remained, they would have eventually become a weight, a distraction, or a limitation to the destiny God was unfolding for you. God protects His chosen ones from premature success. He will not allow someone He has called for a significant purpose to rise too quickly before their character, strength, and wisdom are ready to sustain that level of elevation. He would rather slow you down in private, where no one can see the struggle, than allow you to rise too quickly and then collapse publicly, where everyone is watching. What you experienced as a delay was often mercy hidden behind frustration. What you experienced as rejection was actually divine protection. What you experienced as confusion was God redirecting your steps. And what you experienced as loss was the careful pruning process that removes what is unnecessary so that something greater can grow. In the season of setback, God was not simply allowing things to fall apart without reason. He was intentionally removing elements from your life that looked helpful on the surface but carried hidden spiritual weight. Some things appeared useful, productive, or beneficial outwardly, but inwardly they were slowing your growth, weakening your spiritual focus, or attaching your identity to the wrong foundations. During this difficult season, God was stripping away motivations that were not rooted in purpose. He was removing the desire to prove yourself to others, the need for constant validation, and the ambitions that were driven more by ego than by calling. What once fueled your actions may have looked like passion, but in truth, some of it was built on the desire for recognition, approval, or comparison. Through the setback, God was teaching you a deeper way to live and move. He was teaching you how to continue your journey even when no one applauds you. He was showing you how to trust Him even when reassurance was absent. He was guiding you to obey His direction even when you were not given the full explanation of where the path would lead. What felt like regression during that time was not actually failure or backward movement. It was a refinement. God was refining your character, your intentions, and your understanding of purpose. What seemed like going backward was actually God taking you deeper into wisdom, maturity, and self-awareness. What you experienced as loss was not random subtraction. It was the careful removal of things that could never survive in the future God was preparing for you. Certain habits, attachments, relationships, and expectations had to be removed because they would not have been strong enough to endure the level of responsibility and influence ahead. The setback also forced you into a place where you had to face yourself honestly, without the distractions that once kept you busy. Without constant activity, recognition, or movement, you were confronted with the deeper parts of your heart and mind. This season exposed the areas where you relied too heavily on your own strength instead of surrendering to God's guidance. It revealed patterns of thinking and behavior that might have limited your future success if they had remained unchallenged. The setback became a mirror, showing you the internal adjustments that needed to happen before external growth could occur. Through this process, you learned lessons that comfort and success rarely teach. You learned how to wait without giving up on your faith. You learned how to maintain hope even when there was no visible evidence that things were changing. You learned how to stand firm in your belief even when the environment around you offered no encouragement or confirmation. When you want things to move faster, the season teaches you patience. When you desire ease and convenience, the experience develops discipline within you. When you wanted full control over every outcome, you were taught how to trust God with uncertainty. All along, God was carefully shaping your inner life so that it could eventually support the outer breakthrough that is approaching. He understood that visible success without inner stability would eventually collapse. Therefore, He focused first on strengthening what was inside you. Before allowing fruit to appear in your life, He was growing roots deep within you. Before granting visibility, recognition, or influence, He was strengthening the foundation of your character, humility, and spiritual awareness. The setback never removed the calling that God placed on your life. It never cancelled the assignment that was entrusted to you. It never disqualified you from the purpose you were meant to fulfill. Instead, it rearranged the route you were taking so that you would arrive at your destiny prepared rather than fragile, humble rather than arrogant, and ready rather than overwhelmed. The season that once made you fear that your life had been derailed was actually positioning you more accurately than ever before. The pause that frustrated you was quietly protecting you from outcomes that would have harmed your future. The struggle you questioned was shaping parts of your character that will soon become your greatest strength. The setback was never a permanent stop in your journey. It was a strategic setup, carefully designed by God to prepare you for a breakthrough that will elevate you without destroying you. The pressure you experienced during this process was not your enemy. Pressure has a purpose. Pressure reveals the true structure of something. It exposes what is genuinely strong and what is only appearing strong on the surface. Pressure shows which parts of your life are solid and capable of endurance, and which parts must be rebuilt before they can support greater responsibility. The weight you felt as overwhelming was actually heaven applying the necessary pressure to strengthen the potential that was already within you. In nature and in life, the most valuable things are not formed in comfort. Diamonds do not form in gentle conditions. They develop under intense pressure deep within the earth. Muscles do not grow stronger without resistance and strain. In the same way, spiritual authority is never developed in seasons of ease and convenience. True authority grows from endurance. Wisdom grows from experience. Stability grows from surviving circumstances that once felt unbearable. The pressure you endured was never designed to destroy you. Its purpose was to teach you how to carry greater responsibility without collapsing under its weight. God allows pressure in the lives of those He is preparing because He sees their capacity long before they recognize it themselves. He sees the strength, potential, and resilience within you even when you doubt your own ability to endure. God does not assign heavy seasons to fragile structures. If the weight you experience truly had the power to permanently crush you, it would never have been placed upon you in the first place. The very fact that you survived it is proof that there was already strength within you capable of carrying it. The simple fact that you are still standing today, still holding on to your belief, and still choosing to move forward despite everything you have faced is powerful evidence that you were created for something far greater than you once imagined. Many people would have surrendered under the weight of what you endured, but you remained. Your endurance itself is a sign that your life carries a purpose that requires deeper preparation. The pressure you experienced did not remove the strength that was within you. Instead, it revealed strength that you did not know you possessed. What you once thought might break you actually uncovered a deeper level of resilience that had been hidden beneath the surface. In the same way, the pressure you faced did not weaken your faith. Rather than destroying it, the pressure purified it. Your faith moved from being dependent on comfort, visible results, or emotional reassurance, and became something stronger, something rooted in trust, even when circumstances offered no proof that things were improving. Pressure did not shrink your capacity as a person. Instead, it expanded your endurance. It stretched your ability to remain steady in situations that once would have overwhelmed you. Through those moments, you discovered how much more you were capable of carrying. During those difficult seasons, you developed discipline even when your emotions wanted to take control. You learned how to continue doing what was right even when you did not feel motivated to keep going. You discovered consistency during moments when inspiration faded and when progress seemed invisible. Most importantly, you learned how to choose obedience to God's direction even when the outcome was unclear. You moved forward without having all the answers, trusting that each step of faith would eventually reveal the next. Pressure also forces you into a place of maturity. Instead of reacting emotionally to every difficulty, you began to respond with greater awareness and wisdom. Situations that once triggered immediate reactions began to produce thoughtful reflection and spiritual discernment. Under pressure, your ability to discern what was truly happening around you became sharper. You became more aware of motives, both your own intentions and the intentions of others. Experiences that once confused you began to teach you how to read situations more clearly. You learned the difference between urgency and alignment. Not everything that demands immediate action is actually meant for you. Some things appear urgent but are not aligned with your purpose. You also learned the difference between opportunity and assignment. An opportunity may look appealing, profitable, or exciting, but an assignment is something specifically aligned with the purpose God has placed in your life. Pressure taught you to recognize that difference. In addition, you learned to separate noise from instruction. In a world filled with many voices, opinions, and distractions, you began to recognize which guidance carried genuine direction and which was merely background noise. Situations that once confused you now trigger awareness within you. Where there was once uncertainty, there is now discernment. Another powerful lesson that pressure taught you was how to stand without the need for applause. You learned how to continue doing what was right even when no one was acknowledging your effort. There were seasons when no one was watching your progress, supporting your decisions, or celebrating your perseverance. Yet you continued anyway. You remained committed to your path even when your faithfulness went unnoticed. In those hidden seasons, you learned how to remain faithful in obscurity. Obscurity is often uncomfortable, but it is also the place where true authority is formed. It is in the hidden seasons that character is refined and motives are purified. Pressure also taught you how to turn toward God in ways you never had before. When there was no human solution available and no one who could rescue you from your circumstances, you learned how to pray with deeper sincerity and dependence. When answers did not come quickly, you learned how to listen with patience instead of frustration. When logic could not explain what was happening, you learned how to trust God beyond what your reasoning could understand. Instead of waiting for complete clarity before taking action, you learned how to move forward step by step, trusting that each step of obedience would reveal the next piece of direction. During these seasons, you also learned how to carry responsibility without allowing bitterness or resentment to grow in your heart. You endured long periods of silence when it seemed as though nothing was changing, yet you refused to quit. Even without reassurance or constant confirmation, you learned how to remain grounded and steady in your faith. What once felt like endless resistance was actually a form of spiritual conditioning. Just as athletes train their bodies to perform under pressure, God was training your spirit, your mindset, and even your emotional resilience to remain stable during stress. He was strengthening your inner life so that external success would not destabilize you later. God was preparing your nervous system, your faith, and your perspective to remain calm and focused even when responsibilities increase and when attention begins to grow around you. In other words, He was preparing you to handle visibility without losing humility. He was preparing you to experience success without losing the identity, integrity, and spiritual awareness that define who you truly are. If your journey through life had been easy and free from difficulty, you would never have developed the emotional strength, spiritual endurance, and mental resilience required for the level you are about to enter. Comfort rarely produces depth. Ease rarely builds the kind of inner strength that great responsibility requires. If the pressure you experienced had disappeared too quickly, you might have stepped into the next stage of your life without the preparation necessary to sustain it. God understood that relief arriving too soon would leave parts of your character unformed. So instead of removing the pressure immediately, He allowed the season to continue until your strength had fully matured. God delayed relief, not because He ignored your pain, but because He was completing the work that the pressure was meant to accomplish inside you. Strength takes time to develop. Endurance is built gradually. Wisdom grows through repeated experiences that teach patience, discipline, and trust. The pressure you experienced was never meant to punish you. It was meant to prepare you. Through that pressure, God was strengthening you for responsibilities that will require stability. He was developing you for influence that will require maturity. He was preparing you for an impact that will require wisdom and emotional balance. The level you are approaching in life will demand far more than talent or desire. It will require steadiness when circumstances shift, endurance when challenges appear, and clarity when others around you become confused. The pressure you endured ensured that when you arrive at this new level, you will not arrive fragile, unstable, or easily shaken. The things that once felt overwhelmingly heavy will soon feel manageable because the pressure has trained you to carry greater weight. The situations that once intimidated or challenged you will soon begin to respond to the authority and confidence that have been formed within you. You were never truly being overwhelmed by life. What felt overwhelming was actually the process of strengthening you for the level of responsibility, leadership, and influence you are about to enter. Some of the deepest pain you have carried in your life did not come from external hardship, failure, or lack of opportunity. Instead, it came from people you once trusted deeply. Betrayal creates a unique type of pain because it breaks the expectations we place on those closest to us. Betrayal wounds the soul because it violates agreement and damages the foundation of trust. When someone we believed in proves unreliable, it affects us differently than ordinary hardship. External challenges may test our strength, but betrayal reaches into our emotional and spiritual core. Unlike many other difficulties in life, betrayal often leaves emotional residue that lingers long after the event itself has passed. The memory of broken trust can remain in the heart and mind, influencing how we see others and how we protect ourselves moving forward. However, there is an important truth that becomes clearer over time. Not everyone who walks beside you in one season of life is meant to walk with you into your future. Some individuals are connected to your life only for a limited season. They may be present during certain stages of your journey, but they are not meant to accompany you into the responsibilities, visibility, or influence that lie ahead. There are people who align themselves with the access you provide, not with the purpose you carry. They appreciate the benefits of being close to you, but they are not aligned with the deeper assignment God has placed on your life. When proximity to certain individuals begins to threaten the purpose God has prepared for you, He may allow betrayal to occur. While painful, this exposure serves a protective purpose. God often reveals hidden motives before elevation occurs, because discovering them after you have risen would cost far more. Betrayal is sometimes the way God removes access from people who should not remain in close proximity to your future. If God waited for you to release certain individuals purely through emotional realization, you might hesitate or delay because of loyalty, affection, or shared history. Instead, truth surfaces in a way that brings unavoidable clarity. The disappointment reveals what love may have previously blinded you to. What you could not clearly see while trusting them becomes undeniable through their actions. Some individuals were never meant to remain permanently in your life. Some connections were seasonal experiences designed to teach lessons or serve a temporary purpose. Some relationships were simply points of access, not lifelong assignments. There were people who genuinely enjoyed being around you but quietly resented your growth. Others benefited from your loyalty and support while secretly competing with your calling. Some smiled in your presence, but internally felt threatened by the potential they sensed within you. The betrayal itself did not create these hidden attitudes. It simply revealed what had already existed beneath the surface. The pain of betrayal often comes not only from what someone did, but from the loss of who we believed they were. It forces us to release the image we held in our hearts and accept the truth of who they have shown themselves to be. This experience dismantles emotional investments that once felt secure. It removes the sense of safety that may have been based on assumptions. It breaks illusions and forces a clearer understanding of reality. Although the pain of betrayal is real and deeply felt, the protection it provides is also real. By allowing this separation before your life reaches greater success, God prevents hidden tensions from turning into greater damage later. When elevation arrives in a person's life, it magnifies the motives of everyone around them. Feelings that were once hidden can become stronger when visibility, influence, or favor increases. If certain people had remained close to you when success and recognition began to appear, their jealousy could have transformed into sabotage. Their insecurity might have created resistance against your progress. The access they once had to your life might have become a tool used against you. The separation may have felt sudden and confusing, but it was intentional. The loss may have felt deeply personal, but it served a purpose beyond what you could immediately understand. The betrayal may have felt unfair, but it became a necessary step in protecting your future. Through these experiences, God sharpened your discernment. You learned to observe people's actions rather than relying only on their words. You became more attentive to patterns of behavior instead of trusting promises that were not supported by consistency. You began to understand that agreement does not always mean alignment. Someone may agree with you verbally, yet still not share your values, your direction, or your purpose. Betrayal also taught you the importance of healthy boundaries. You learned that kindness does not require you to remain unguarded or vulnerable to everyone. Being a loving person does not mean granting unlimited access to your life. You discovered that loyalty to God and to the purpose He placed on your life must always come before loyalty to individuals who may not share that same commitment. Through this painful but transformative process, you learned how to stand on your own without allowing bitterness to take root in your heart. You learned how to release people without seeking revenge. You learned how to move forward without carrying the heavy emotional weight of resentment. What once felt like a devastating setback was actually a necessary step toward your breakthrough. The separation cleared space in your life so that the future God prepared for you could unfold without hidden opposition. The setback that came through betrayal was not merely a painful interruption in your life. It served a deeper spiritual purpose. Through that difficult experience, God was clearing the path so that true alignment could take place in your life. When betrayal occurs, it often removes relationships that were never truly aligned with your destiny. Although those relationships may have once seemed valuable or supportive, their hidden motives could not coexist with the direction God was leading you toward. By allowing the betrayal to reveal the truth, God created space for healthier and more authentic connections to enter your life. The removal of those relationships made room for people who will respect your growth instead of secretly competing with it. It created the possibility for connections with individuals who can celebrate your progress sincerely and openly without feeling threatened by the purpose or potential within you. More importantly, it prepared your life for what can be called divine connections, relationships that arrive not by coincidence, but through alignment with your calling. These are people who come into your life whole, emotionally healthy, spiritually aware, and truly assigned to walk beside you as you move into your next season. The people who walked away from you were never meant to complete the journey with you. Their presence was limited to a particular chapter of your life. The individuals who turned against you were never meant to stand beside you when the greater responsibilities of your future began to unfold. What was exposed through betrayal was not meant to remain hidden forever. The exposure served as protection. It revealed truths that might have remained concealed until a much more damaging moment later in your life. The betrayal did not destroy you. Instead, it refined you. It strengthened your discernment, clarified your boundaries, and helped you recognize the difference between relationships built on convenience and relationships built on genuine alignment. There was also a season in your life when it felt as though God had become silent. During that time, you prayed sincerely and waited for answers. You expected clear direction, visible signs, or confirmations that would reassure you that you were moving in the right direction. However, instead of receiving the kind of responses you hoped for, you encountered stillness. Your prayers seemed to rise upward, yet the answers did not arrive in the way you expected. This created a period of uncertainty that made you question what was happening. In those moments, you may have wondered whether heaven had become distant. You may have questioned whether you had made a mistake, missed an important sign, or somehow been overlooked. The silence can feel confusing when we are accustomed to receiving reassurance, but there is a truth hidden within that experience that many people do not immediately understand. Silence does not mean absence. Silence often means training. God was never ignoring your prayers. Instead, He was teaching you how to listen in a deeper and more mature way. When external noise becomes quiet, the inner voice becomes clearer. God was allowing silence so that your ability to perceive spiritual guidance could sharpen. Constant reassurance can sometimes create dependence on repeated confirmation. But when reassurance is temporarily removed, discernment begins to grow. You learn to sense direction even when it is not loudly announced. During that quiet season, God was teaching you how to move forward through faith rather than through emotional comfort. You were learning how to trust His presence without needing constant visible evidence. As time passed in that silence, your inner awareness began to mature. You became more sensitive to subtle impressions, gentle inner nudges, and quiet warnings that you might not have noticed before. You began to recognize the difference between a sudden impulse and genuine spiritual instruction. Not every thought required immediate action, and not every delay meant something was wrong. Your understanding of guidance began to deepen. During that period, your dependence on other people's opinions also began to shift. Before, you may have leaned heavily on the advice, approval, or validation of others to confirm your decisions. But the silent season showed you that human voices can sometimes create confusion. Too many opinions can blur clarity. In contrast, when God's direction comes, it often brings a sense of peace, even if the path ahead feels challenging or unfamiliar. Through this process, you learn to seek alignment rather than validation. Instead of looking for approval from others, you began focusing on whether your actions were aligned with the deeper sense of direction you felt within your spirit. The silence also trained you to remain calm when anxiety tried to push you into unnecessary action. You learned how to remain still when fear demanded movement. You learned how to wait without panic when impatience demanded immediate answers. You learned how to listen carefully when guidance arrived quietly, like a whisper rather than a loud command. Within the silence, God also revealed the internal noise that had previously interfered with your clarity. Hidden fears, lingering doubts, and patterns of overthinking were exposed because they had been competing with your ability to hear clearly. Through this process, you learned to recognize the difference between thoughts that were rooted in faith and thoughts that were rooted in fear. True discernment is born when distractions are removed. The silent season also strengthened your sense of self-trust. You began to respect the insights and impressions that arose within you instead of dismissing them too quickly. You learned to pause before reacting impulsively. You learned to observe patterns in situations and relationships rather than rushing to quick conclusions. These changes made you more precise in your thinking, more grounded in your emotions, and more spiritually aware of the direction your life was taking. What once felt like a confusing setback, a season of betrayal, silence, and uncertainty, was actually part of a greater preparation. Every difficult experience was shaping your awareness, strengthening your discernment, and aligning you with the breakthrough that is ahead. What once felt like abandonment was not truly abandonment. It was a season of refinement. In that quiet and uncertain time, God was not withdrawing from you. He was carefully shaping and purifying your inner life. The feeling of distance was actually part of a process designed to strengthen your spirit and deepen your understanding. What appeared to be confusion was not chaos or disorder. It was recalibration. Your direction was being adjusted so that your steps would align more precisely with the path prepared for you. Sometimes confusion arises when old patterns are being removed and new clarity has not yet fully appeared. What seemed like endless waiting was not wasted time. It was preparation. God was using the delay to build qualities within you that would be necessary for the future you are moving toward. During that silent season, something important was happening inside you. The silence sharpened your spiritual sensitivity. When constant noise, distraction, and reassurance fade away, the ability to perceive subtle truth becomes stronger. Your awareness was being fine-tuned so that when God speaks, you no longer depend on loud signs or dramatic confirmation. Instead, you recognize truth through resonance within your spirit. His voice becomes familiar because you learn to recognize it in quiet places where distractions could no longer compete with clarity. Because of this training, things are different now. When instruction comes, it settles within you with clarity and peace. When direction appears, you are able to move forward without hesitation because your confidence is no longer dependent on external validation. When doors open or close in your life, you no longer react with panic or confusion. Instead, you understand that each movement is part of divine guidance. What once caused anxiety now produces discernment. The setback that came through silence was never empty or meaningless. It carried intention. That season trained you to operate with precision, maturity, and discernment. You were not being ignored during that time. Instead, you were being prepared to hear clearly, to move wisely, and to follow the right direction with confidence and stability. Failure also played an important role in your journey. Failure did not define who you are. It was never a final judgment from heaven about your worth, your purpose, or your calling. Instead, failure was a form of instruction wrapped in discomfort. It was a lesson presented through experience. What appeared to be a painful ending was actually a pause designed to teach you how to rise correctly the next time. Success without wisdom often creates pride. When people rise too quickly without understanding, they may begin to believe that their success is entirely their own doing. Elevation without humility can eventually lead to collapse because the foundation underneath it is not strong enough to support the weight. For this reason, God sometimes allows failure in the lives of chosen ones. He does not allow it to shame them or destroy their confidence. Instead, He allows it to ground them, helping them develop humility and deeper understanding. God knows that arriving too quickly at a high level of influence or success without proper preparation can damage the very blessing that was meant to benefit you. Therefore, before promotion occurs, He teaches perspective. Through failure, you were forced to confront yourself honestly. You learned accountability. Instead of hiding behind excuses or blaming circumstances, you had to examine your own decisions and understand how your choices shaped the outcome. You also learned patience during the times when progress slowed down. The delay forced you to recognize that growth cannot always be rushed. Failure revealed the cost of shortcuts. You learned that moving ahead too quickly without preparation often creates deeper delays later. The time saved in the moment can result in greater setbacks in the future. Through these experiences, you discovered that consistency, discipline, and obedience are far more valuable than temporary excitement, popularity, or talent alone. Talent may open doors, but character sustains what talent begins. Failure also removed false confidence. Sometimes confidence that appears strong is actually built on fragile foundations. When those foundations are tested, weaknesses become visible. Failure exposed the areas of your life that needed to be strengthened. It revealed where deeper growth was necessary. At the same time, failure removed arrogance, not by humiliating you publicly, but by humbling you internally. It allowed you to develop humility without destroying your dignity. Through this process, you learned that real growth requires surrender to the process of development. True maturity does not happen instantly. It forms gradually through experience, reflection, and correction. Failure deepened your character. It developed resilience so that challenges no longer overwhelm you as easily as before. It increased your self-awareness so that you understand your strengths and weaknesses more clearly. It also developed emotional maturity, allowing you to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. You learned to respect timing and appreciate the unseen preparation that often takes place before visible success appears. Through these experiences, several important truths became clear to you. Applause does not equal approval. Just because people celebrate something does not mean it is truly right or aligned with purpose. Visibility does not equal readiness. Being seen by others does not mean someone is fully prepared to handle the responsibilities that come with attention. Momentum does not replace foundation. Moving quickly forward cannot substitute for building something stable and lasting underneath. Failure also gave you a type of wisdom that success alone rarely teaches. Through it, you learned discernment. You became better at recognizing warning signs before committing to decisions. You learned to pause and reflect before moving forward too quickly. You developed the habit of listening carefully before taking action. These lessons made you more thoughtful, more intentional, and more grounded in the decisions you make. Failure also changed the way you see other people. It developed empathy within you. Instead of judging individuals who struggle or fall short, you now understand how easily anyone can face difficulty. Because of this understanding, your compassion deepened, your leadership matured. Failure softens your heart while sharpening your judgment. You learned to distinguish between ambition and alignment. Ambition seeks advancement at any cost, while alignment seeks the path that matches God's purpose. You also learned the difference between rushing forward and being truly ready, and you discovered the difference between trying to prove yourself and allowing yourself to grow into the person you are meant to become. Looking back, what once embarrassed you now equips you. The experiences that once slowed your progress now provide stability. The losses that once felt painful have now become wisdom stored within you, ready to guide your future decisions. Because of these lessons, when success finally arrives in your life, you will handle it differently. You will steward success with humility instead of ego. You will make decisions with foresight instead of impulse. You will protect what you build instead of risking it for temporary reward. You will not waste opportunities because you now understand the cost required to create them. You will not misuse influence because you recognize the responsibility that comes with it. You will not abandon the process that built you because you now understand the consequences of ignoring it. The failure that once embarrassed you was actually protecting your future. It slowed you down so that you would not rise too quickly without the wisdom necessary to remain steady. That delay ensured that when elevation finally arrives, it will not destroy you through pressure or pride. Instead, it will establish you firmly. Failure was never your enemy. It was a teacher sent to prepare you for the kind of success that will endure and remain stable over time. Divine timing rarely feels comfortable to the human heart. When God works according to His timing, it often feels slower than what we would naturally prefer. Waiting stretches your faith in ways that immediate answers never could. When answers come quickly, faith is rarely tested deeply. But when answers take time, your trust in God is stretched and strengthened. Delay presses against your patience. It reveals fears that were hidden beneath the surface, fears about whether things will ever change, fears about whether your prayers were truly heard. Waiting forces you to face those fears and decide whether you will trust God, even without visible proof that things are moving. Waiting can often feel like standing still, while everything around you seems to continue moving forward. It can feel as though others are progressing while you remain in the same place. But what appears slow to you is often perfectly precise according to heaven's timing. Delay can cause you to question your own understanding. You may begin to wonder whether you misunderstood God's direction, whether you waited too long, or whether the opportunity you hoped for has already passed. But delay should not be mistaken for confusion. Delay is actually coordination. God never allows delay without a purpose behind it. What feels like postponement is often part of a larger process of alignment. God uses delay to bring together the right people, the right opportunities, the right resources, and the right level of personal maturity, so that when the moment arrives, everything will function together in harmony. God is not only concerned with helping you reach a certain destination, He is equally concerned with ensuring that when you arrive, you are able to remain there. A blessing that arrives too early can become a burden instead of a gift. If certain things had happened exactly when you wanted them to happen, the outcome might not have lasted. The responsibility attached to that blessing might have overwhelmed you at that time. Delay, therefore, became part of your preparation. Through delay, your emotional maturity began to grow. You learned how to face disappointment without abandoning your faith. You discovered how to process unmet expectations without giving up entirely. You also learned how to maintain hope without becoming obsessed with immediate results. Instead of allowing waiting to make you bitter, you slowly developed the ability to remain hopeful while also remaining patient. Much of this emotional maturity formed quietly within you, in places that others could not see. Delay also strengthened your endurance. You learned how to remain faithful even when there was no immediate reward. You learned how to keep showing up, keep believing, and keep doing what was right even when nothing appeared to be changing around you. The waiting season builds stamina within your spirit. What lies ahead in your life requires endurance, not just excitement. Excitement can begin a journey, but endurance sustains it over time. Delay also aligned you with the correct season for what God prepared for you. You were not the only one being prepared. While you were waiting, other people were also being prepared for the roles they would play in your future. Other opportunities were developing. Other doors were opening and closing in ways that would eventually create the right path for your moment to appear. Certain paths had to be clear before your opportunity could arrive. If your moment had come earlier, it might have collided with resistance that belonged to a previous season. During the delay, God was not denying His promise to you. Instead, He was adjusting the timing of events so that everything would unfold in the proper order. He was synchronizing details that you could not see. He was arranging circumstances that were far beyond your control. God was not withholding blessing from you. He was preparing something permanent instead of something temporary. The life you are stepping into now requires a version of you that only delay could produce. A rushed version of yourself might have reacted emotionally when challenges appeared. An impatient version of yourself might have tried to force results before the moment was right. A less grounded version of yourself might have struggled to maintain stability once success arrived. Delay, therefore, became a process that purified your motives. It revealed the deeper reasons behind what you were pursuing.